Cineboys to Cinemen, episode 63.
63?
63. Hope you're well, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. This week, Noah Nora.
Noah Nora. I don't even think last week we mentioned we were going to do it, but...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've really...
There's been some changes.
Yes. Forced on us by the cruel hand of...
the Everyman company, yeah. Whoever owns Everyman Cinemas, probably Viacom or something. Basically,
hang your head in shame.
It's a long story, but we went to go see Megalopolis. It was the wrong time, so we couldn't see that. I've since watched it, and I've watched Joker as well. But you haven't had a chance to watch either of those ones.
No, I was with you during the failed Megalopolis screening. Was my fault because I got the cinema times wrong.
Yeah, but then you went to see Nora, and I was going to go watch it yesterday. And I went to the Everyman, and it was all booked up. So a lot of sort of gaffs. So we found ourselves at an impasse.
Yes,
but don't you worry.
Fret not.
Yes,
loyal listener. You've had to deal with our ineptitude, which has probably been a sort of Cineboys Cinemen high, which for us is saying something. So this week we're going to do another one of our director deep dive episodes. We have the fabled cup, the same cup we used for that video we did on the Instagram ages ago.
Yes,
for a director deep dive we didn't do.
We never managed that one.
Yeah, we never managed it. But
We've got plans. Yes,
we do have things on the horizon which we feel will sort of eradicate any of your concerns.
About
where things are going.
It will tighten the screws a little bit.
Yeah. To the untrained ear, it sounds like we're losing our touch and falling out of love with it.
Yeah.
But no, we've got things coming up. Definitely, sometime around the new year that is really gonna liven this rusty old
boat.
Up.
Ship. Vessel. Yeah.
The good ship Cineboys to Cinemen is going to get a much needed lick of paint.
The RMS Britannic. That was a real boat. Ship.
However, in the interim, you're going to have to deal with our ineptitude.
Yep.
So I have the cup, and Ben, did you want to pick?
Go on then.
One?
I'm gonna do this reasonably live within
live-ish.
limits.
Yeah. If it's a director we don't like, we're going to just...
If you're listening to this at 20 to 9, it's live. Okay. I've just picked James Mangold.
James Mangold, okay.
Yeah, there we go.
So this is going to be like a chance for you guys to really see our off-the-cuff film knowledge.
Yeah, no planning at all.
Not that we plan much anyway.
No. But I have like a car journey to think about it usually. Now I don't. So
I do it on the train to and from work. I'll hastily scribble some notes. But yeah, James Mangold. Should we do it?
Let's do it.
Questing the cinematic void.
All right then, James Mangold. An interesting filmmaker in the sense that he is very much what you might consider a director for hire.
I'm glad you said that. I was about to bring that up, yeah.
But not in the sense... I think he's more of a director hire, more in the sense of like older Hollywood. And I think in the sense that his films still have...
They've got a stamp to them in some way, haven't they?
Yeah, I think what I mean is that in the modern context of director for hire, when you think about these kind of like young up and coming directors who then get sort of swallowed up by the Marvel machine, for example.
Yeah,
and you always get the impression that they're kind of there. Obviously, they bring their skills and their expertise to bear, but I think the reason they're picked is because they are, their voice isn't strong enough that they can sort of stand against the Disney marketing machine. So they're just there to guide the sort of the film through the production process, whilst also sort of satiating the marketing desires of Marvel, Disney, et al. So in that sense he's not a director for hire, but I mean it like I sort of mentioned, like I alluded earlier, in the sort of shambolic fashion. I do think he's kind of like that director for hire more in the sense that he works across a broad range of genres, and whilst there isn't necessarily something that's immediately identifiable about his films, I think he does sort of apply... he sort of stays true to a lot of the kind of I guess sort of like visual or thematic foundations of the genres that he works in really, really well.
Yeah, it tends to be sort of cream of the crop.
Yeah,
I think he's a real safe pair of hands, I suppose.
Yeah. In the way that a lot of the older directors for hire were.
Oh yeah, and there's like kind of like, I think his sort of stamp on things tends to be reliability more than anything. I'm not saying all of his films are perfect. I've got quite a lot of problems with some of his films, but generally speaking, it's sort of like you do know you're in for a kind of interesting watch.
Yeah.
I've got all of his entire filmography is now sort of swimming in my head, and I won't mention any specifics yet, but he is like a director for hire with a kind of sort of hint of an auteur about him as well. More so than like Mark Forster, for example. Okay. You know what I mean? Like one of those guys who just sort of like his name is just in the credits, like, and that's it. And wildly inconsistent results. Like you don't know what you're going to get, but you do with a Mangold film, I think, to an extent.
Yeah, there's they're almost always very well made, and they do have their roots are sort of deep in in Hollywood. Do you know what I mean? In terms of the kind of the output. For example, his work with Westerns, or a lot of his films actually seem quite sort of indebted to Westerns in terms of like the sort of the structure of his stories.
Oh yeah,
the sort of the way he approaches his storytelling visually.
Yeah.
But they just sort of feel like there is this kind of the Hollywood lineage is sort of apparent in his films. And he really does remind me of like the sort of directors for hire in like the classic Hollywood era.
Yeah,
in the way they'd sort of just apply themselves to these films so rigorously, and his understanding of the sort of tropes and the thematic stuff that's kind of like can be done to death in lesser hands. He just seems to have a real firm grasp of it.
Okay, yeah,
and he gives it a sort of an energy, and I think that's something that I've always quite admired about his films. And he does the thing that a great director for hire can do in the sense that he can make subject matters of absolutely no interest to me interesting.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
There's one film in particular that stands to mind. Should we just start
rattling off his filmography?
So Ford versus Ferrari is the film I'm sort of referencing in the sense that I have absolutely no interest in sort of cars or racing. Yeah. I have a sort of respect for it, a distant respect, in the sense that obviously it's quite a dangerous and physically taxing endeavour. And there's obviously an artistry to the
whole
sort of
culture, isn't it?
Yeah,
to
really, the sort of
really
construction and performance of of motor vehicles.
Yeah.
It's not my world. It's far too much effort for me. I don't even drive.
Same. Yeah.
So
drive a Clio. So
you're halfway there.
Yeah.
He made the story about those two sort of powerhouses in their respective fields interesting, captivating, and that's, I think, testament to a good, solid Hollywood filmmaker. Have you seen it?
I've not seen it. No,
I saw it in the cinema, which I'm always kind of surprised about, because I think it's again, it's not the kind of film that would pull me in, but Mangold does have that ability.
Yeah, when you see his name on something like I just looked up his filmography, and what he's got a film out later this year, or maybe
the Bob Dylan
year.
film.
Is that him? Is it?
Yeah, he's doing the Bob Dylan film. Isn't
I'm going to go see that. I think that would be good.
I usually hate biopics, particularly music ones.
Well, he's done Walk the Line as
exactly,
well, hasn't he?
Which I don't dislike. But
I think it's one of his weaker films. I think it hasn't aged as well as some of his other films. But I'll give that a go. I think that's it'd be interesting to go and watch that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'll be surprised. You never know.
Ford vs Ferrari is very much that. I mean, it is just about a race between these two titans in these two big companies, and obviously Ferrari have got this very well established
there's a prestige about Ferrari,
prestige, and that prestige is merited through the way their vehicles perform and the artistry that goes into the construction and the maintenance, both visually and in terms of the performance of the vehicles. You can tell I know loads about what I'm talking about here. And obviously the way that Ford are framed are these sort of new guys on the block, these sort of spunky sort of newcomers that are going to come along and sort of upset the established order, and there's almost like this kind of like, blue collar sort of like rough sort of guy fighting against this sort of snobby artist. Do you know what I mean? Which is one of the film's more problematic elements. Obviously, Ford are a massive company, and Henry Ford was a bit of a nutter. So, is his name Henry Ford? He was
the kind of American innovation. Post-industrial.
So that's kind of one of the more sort of I guess that's that kind of like dynamic of power between these two companies established as a storytelling device. You obviously want to root for Ford, and Matt Damon is the sort of the one of the guys that's driving the sort of company's foray into sort of motor racing.
Okay,
and then they enlist an English fella who used to drive tanks in the Second World War, who played by Christian Bale.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah,
and he's like this kind of quite this anti-establishment, quite sort of acerbic character that doesn't really tolerate any bullshit, and that puts him at odds obviously with the sort of the hierarchy of Ford, and the sort of various middlemen and middle managers who sort of have a stake in Ford and don't like that this guy sort of like has his sort of hands at the wheel of one of their sort of business ventures sort of thing. So there's all these different sort of power dynamics at play, and I don't know, like it is really well done. It's really well acted. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it's just solid, and it relies on like a very solid Matt Damon performance, a relatively solid Christian Bale performance.
Yeah.
And those two together work really well.
I've seen clips. Bale looks like he's hamming it up quite a lot, but in a good way,
he's definitely leaning into the sort of
way,
English sort of bloke.
Right.
Thing.
Okay.
I don't know. It's good. And despite my lack of knowledge or reservations about the framing of certain characters, I kind of came away thinking that was just a well-made, earnest piece of sort of Hollywood filmmaking that we don't really get a lot of anymore. And that's why I think Mangold deserved his place in the heralded cup, the Cinemed Cup, because he's sort of like one of the few directors that can make these kinds of movies. And he's one of the few directors that seems to be given the opportunity to do these kinds of films.
Yeah, definitely. I'd be interested to see how that film would have gone down had it not been directed by him, because it seems like there's, all the kind of classic tropes are there with regards to, sounds like a bit of an underdog story in the sense that I think Ford sound like they're framed to be sort of the underdogs. Maybe they were in this context. They're a huge
I think they were.
company.
Going on the history of the film, which might not be totally accurate, as Hollywood seldom is, but I think the idea was that they were obviously in the commercial market very successful.
Yes.
Whereas Ferrari are seen as obviously this, there's highbrow, only for a select amount of people kind of thing.
Okay.
It's interesting thinking in the context of Ford versus Ferrari as well. Ferrari.
So Michael Mann,
which is I'd much prefer that to Ford versus Ferrari. It's a bit more. It's not quite as sort of fanciful in its portrayal of Ferrari, and there's
more of an examination.
Very much in line with sort of Michael Mann's sort of fascination with kind of like troubled masculine characters.
Okay.
But thinking about it in that context is interesting because of the way that the legacy of Ferrari and what it means, and but in this case, they are definitely seen as the sort of snobbish, foreign, Italian. They've got, they don't like the Americans are muscling on their turf.
Right, yeah.
And thinking about it now in the modern context, the sort of ubiquitous nature of American culture, it seems ridiculous that they're sort of framing themselves as this sort of oppressed force, But again, it's Hollywood in that classic sense as well, thematically.
No,
it's a hark back to kind of like 90s era blockbusters,
Okay. Oh man, I will watch it. I think if I stumble across it, I will give it a go, because it's a blind spot of me from Mangold's from the perspective, not from the perspective of Mangold, but from my perspective, looking into Mangold.
Yeah. Looking in.
Yes.
Looking deep within.
I do think. I think the way you described it is very indicative of his approach to filmmaking, which is He's kind of a crowd pleaser, but that's not to say he treats his audience like fools. You know what I mean?
No.
I feel like he does.
Some films like that, they're very transient. They just pass you by. There's nothing to them. They literally exist to remind the audience of a certain moment in history or a certain event of note. You know, and I think in lesser hands it could have definitely been that. Whereas this, it does have a bit more about it in terms of the performances. It's very well shot. The racing sequences are really quite good.
Yeah.
Again, not level of Ferrari with Michael Mann, but Michael Mann's a whole different class, I think. No disrespect to James Mangold, but it's a very solid, well-made, enjoyable film. And again, we don't get a lot of those. And when they come round and they're good, they give you a feeling that like better films can't. I don't know. It's really strange. There's something quite comforting about them. I remember when we had Hannah on, she was talking about Twisters and Twister. It's that kind of thing. It's like a familiarity. It's like just a nice pair of old slippers. I don't know.
Good old pair of jeans.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay. I'll have to. I think that bleeds into his other films somewhat as well.
Yeah.
I'm thinking a film like 3:10 to Yuma. I know it's a remake, but it is fantastic. I love that film.
I've not seen that since like the first year of uni, so you might have to sort of lead me on this one. But I remember really, again, just very serviceable, very well done.
Yeah, just
homage to one of the great films, one of the great westerns.
Completely, yeah, and just westerns in general, like
one of the more popular or well-known westerns, maybe.
Completely, yeah. It's very populist, and it the whole film is sort of hinged on the premise of they have to make the train.
Yeah,
that is sort of the driving force behind this film, and there's kind of like the classic sheriff transporting a prisoner type sort of plot device, which really, really plays in the film's hand, and it looks really, really nice as well. Like he commits to a visual style, and he does that throughout. Like it doesn't feel muddled or unfocused in that way, in like a visual sense.
Yeah.
And it's like really, I'm going to say this word again. Like I'm conscious that I said this on the podcast when we were talking about Toe Hooper back with the film angle, but it is quite sort of playful, and there's a sense of humour about it, but there's also a seriousness about the performances. Again, this is another Bale performance, and Russell Crowe as well. They are clearly taking it seriously, but the way the film unfurls is like there's a lot of like nudge nudge wink wink moments. I'm thinking right at the end when he whistles when the train's leaving, that really sticks with me, that moment. And again, it could have been a film like Hostiles, which I enjoyed, but I don't really remember. And that's another Bale, Christian Bale western.
Christian Bale western, yeah.
But it just sort of was a bit forgettable for me. I don't really remember much about the plot or even really my enjoyment of the film. I remember it being like fine. I remember it could have come out on Netflix. But with 3:10 to Yuma, there's like it's elevated past that point, I think, just because it's sort of really tonally focused, and it knows exactly what it's paying homage to, and it also knows what the films that it is paying homage to, like it knows why they were successful and why they endured in the kind of audience's mind, and it really kind of takes those concepts and sort of wraps it up in a nice little kind of modern context for you. He's great at that kind of stuff, and I think visually, I think the next time he was that striking was probably Logan, actually. But yeah, no, 3:10 to Yuma, a real strong one from Mangold, and don't really have a bad word to say about it. It's just got a good set piece at the end as well, as all westerns do.
Yeah. He's good at a set piece. He's good. He is good at sort of lean, muscular action. In his films.
Yes.
He again. I mean, despite someone sort of being a bit negative about him, but there's not a great deal of innovation in terms of the way that they look.
No,
but he knows how to do things really, really well. Things that have done before, but really, really well.
Yeah,
and I just think there is definite space and room for that in the landscape of Hollywood, especially nowadays.
It's like, I suppose what he's doing is he clearly has such a, let's say he was a painter, he he wouldn't paint in an abstract fashion. He'd try and paint a Rembrandt. You know what I mean? Like that's what he would try and do. I imagine he would like be so aware of his influences that he wouldn't even bother trying to change it up too much.
Yeah.
And 310 to Yuma is just a good example of that. There are other. It's a strange filmography. He's not afraid of genre hopping.
Copland.
Yes,
Copland is. I watched that a couple of months ago, and I'm really struck by how much I enjoyed it. It was just again like a really solid crime film.
Okay,
the sort of late 90s, there was a lot of like police dramas.
And
a lot of it was about police corruption.
Yeah,
I got the feeling maybe there was some sort of like pervasive distrust towards the police. I don't know in America at that time,
maybe
but
declassified.
CIA like just this idea of like institutional corruption and it going right all the way up to the top.
Yeah,
and
right.
the sort of on face value, we were sort of made to see the police on one side and criminality on the other, but the idea of these two things are intertwined sort of speaks more about the kind of perhaps the more sort of more entrenched moral sickness of the heart of society. But I don't know, like maybe it felt like at that time people were like more accepting of that theme. But it's a film from 1997.
It's an early one, an early Mangold.
Yeah, an early Mangold, and it is just great. I mean, Copland is the name of a town that was. I think it's just outside New York, so New Jersey way, I think.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And it's where a lot of the police who serve in New York live.
Right.
So it's like a community of police officers, sort of thing.
Wow, okay, yeah.
And it's got such a stacked cast. Like Sylvester Stallone's the lead. It's I think one of his best performances. He's fantastic in it.
Oh man.
He really shows his chops, and I'll go into that a little bit. But it's also got like Harvey Keitel, Ray Liotta,
some classic 90s sort of
Michael Rappaport.
Right, okay.
Is that you say his name? That's right, isn't it?
Yeah,
Rappaport.
I think so. Yeah.
Robert De Niro. How could I forget that? Robert Patrick. Both the Roberts are in. The big Roberts.
Patrick as well.
It's just, like, and the whole idea is that Sylvester Stallone is the sheriff in Copland.
Yeah, right, okay.
And he is kind of peripheral.
Yeah.
So, like, I think he saved someone's life. He saved his high school sweetheart's life from drowning, and in the process damaged his hearing.
Okay.
So he was never, because of this, he was never allowed to, like, police in New York, but he was allowed this sheriff job in this sort of sleepy town where not a lot happens.
Yeah.
People like him, but they don't respect him,
Okay.
And he is kind of like, he views these sort of like, Harvey Keitel is the kind of ringleader of this group of police officers who live in Copland, and he really like loves them. He looks at them almost like, again, like he's peripheral, like he's not allowed in.
Right.
And he's sort of he's a bit of a yes man. So these corrupt officers keep him there because they know they don't have to worry about anything he's going to do. Because he almost admires them too much. He's got this like childlike fascination with life over the side of the bridge in New York.
Okay.
So there's a lot of very unsubtle visual and thematic metaphors in this film.
Yeah.
And he's like looking wistfully across into New York and all the crime and deprivation, and he's there going, God, I wish I could go over there and be like a policeman. There's almost like this fantasy element, this childlike fantasy.
Yeah.
And that's why Stallone's so good in it, because he's so vulnerable and so like browbeaten, He's sort of this lumbering, almost sort of oafish type,
right? Yeah,
but he doesn't oversell it. You sort of feel quite a lot of sympathy for him in the sense that he, however misguided you may think his dreams and intentions are, that's what he really wanted to do, and he can't do that. So he's just left to watch the people that he sort of lauds as heroes from the sidelines as they sort of blow off steam.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the more he spends time with them, the more he realises. I think he has suspicions that he pushes to the back of his mind to sort of facilitate his sort of like fantastical view about good, honest police work. But he begins to realise that obviously there's this web of corruption.
Okay.
And De Niro plays someone from Internal Affairs.
Oh.
Who is like trying to basically break this like really well entrenched ring of corruption in the police force.
Nice.
I won't go too much more into the narrative, but it ends up with like Stallone having to like basically literally go at odds with this group of corrupt cops, and also like because you get the impression he's just this like really browbeating guy. Like he's allowed his life to sort of pass him by. He's allowed himself just to spend it. He's accepted almost that he's never going to be that person that he always wanted to be.
Man, was this as cool in Mangold in a way?
I think so. I mean, I honestly like, and it's so. Again, it's not particularly subtle, but it's so. The cast is stacked.
Yeah,
and they're all playing sort of versions of characters you've probably seen them do better in more reputable films.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Again, like that's very much like the 90s, isn't it? Like
De Niro post Heat, post Goodfellas.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And you've got
Stallone
Keitel post like his Tarantino collaborations. And he's obviously worked with Scorsese and
Jane
Campion, and Abel
yeah.
Ferrara. So like you're getting like light versions of characters they've already played, but that's such a 90s thing.
And also it sounds like it plays a little bit into the themes of the film as well.
Having
these well-established guys who like seemingly know what they're doing, and then this outsider. I mean, Stallone might be the exception to that rule. Sounds like it's well cast though.
I mean, with the greatest respect to Stallone, when you put him up against likes of Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro, he's not in the same league in terms of as an actor.
No, I don't think so.
Do you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, he's fantastic in Rambo, and I've got a soft spot for the Rocky films. Yeah, and let's not forget he wrote the first Rocky. Do you know what I mean? So
did he win an Academy Award?
He did, for best screenplay. So obviously he's no stranger to a good performance, and he's a great presence in Hollywood. But in terms of like that, again, the word you said, prestige, I don't think maybe he's considered in that. So I'd never considered that sort of meta.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, maybe it just it does. That does just make sense to me in terms of from a casting point of view.
Yeah,
you've got someone who's sort of wistfully looking out into these guys' lives and being like, I wish I could be a proper actor, not just an action star. I don't know.
There's something in that. It's interesting.
I'm not sure Stallone would have allowed that to be a sort of overt.
Well, that's
thing,
the thing. I really like it because you think about action stars today. We talk about your Rocks, for example, or The Rock.
Yeah.
It's abundantly clear that ego dictates a lot of the decisions in terms of the films that he selects and the way that his character is presented in those films. We've talked about this before, I think, when we did our Fast and Furious episode. But it's interesting when they, it's sort of like the way in which blockbusters are made and the way that obviously they tie into the sort of the desired identity that they want to sort of show on screen and how that reflects their real life persona, or at least the sort of persona that they want to purport to people or show to people. It's interesting now to think The Rock is now doing that film with one of the Safdie brothers, which seems like a sort of more low budget affair.
It does.
So filmmaking, even someone like The Rock, in the same way that Stallone might be felt during that time, this idea that I am an action star, but I want to be taken seriously too. And part of that process of being taken seriously is dropping that ego. And dropping, you have to understand that if you want to be respected more as an actor, you can't go into a film with the kind of demands, the blockbuster demands that you would get if you were playing an action character, a more action orientated character. So that's interesting that you mentioned that. But he's superb in it. He's really good in it, Stallone. Really, really good. And the film, again, talking about Mangold's sort of Western roots, it has like a Rio Bravo style sort of hold up shootout ending, which is really great as well.
Oh, nice, man. Yeah.
So great film.
The Rock, man. Like, he's promoting Red One at the moment. He's on Instagram all the time, and he called that film our little Christmas film. The budget of that film was $250 million.
Apparently it's wank.
Yeah, apparently it's shit as well.
Yeah, I've really fallen out of love with him in the sense that, not that I was ever that emphatically in love with him, but I think he carried himself as that nice guy for a very long time. And obviously, if you were a child in the 90s, there's a good chance you were into wrestling. He's in people's hearts then for that reason. But I don't know. Like, I just feel like that Hollywood ego, like that ultra Hollywood movie star, like stratospheric, it obviously has impacted the way he perceives himself and the roles that he's chosen and the kind of character he wants to play. The counting punches thing, maybe we said this before. We've been through that. All of that, like, it just, I don't know, smacks to me of someone that's not as grounded as they sort of purport themselves to be.
Yeah. I don't know.
Which I don't know why I was ever surprised that he wasn't, but I do think it's interesting that he's now, because I remember thinking, I think we talked about this before in regards to Southland Tales, but he's really good in that.
Yeah, man, I love him in that film.
Yeah,
he plays sort of an anxious guy. Yeah.
And again, it's going against type.
Yeah.
Not that he really had a type then, because his career was obviously very fledgling by that point. But
2005, so much less.
yes.
Yeah,
was that post Scorpion King?
It was, yeah, but in a way, that film had a kind of direct-to-DVD aura to it, which I think wouldn't have projected him in the kind of like established action star realm.
No.
But so yeah, I find it fascinating that he did that film, and it's a shame that he's not kind of continued in that way.
Smasher film with the Safdie, one half of the Safdie brothers duet. That could be his re-emergence into that sort of realm. And again, I just think you have to check yourself as an actor in that way. You're going to have to probably play characters that aren't going to be immediately endear themselves to the audience. Yeah, because his a lot of his film career has basically been like a fairground ride. You know what I mean? Not to sort of like
no, you're right.
Not to like Nick Scorsese's critique of Marvel and sort of hastily bolt it onto the career of one actor, but. So many of his films, they just feel like that sort of extension of that, that sort of cookie cutter, mass appeal sort of action films or
I'm thinking
comedies.
I'm thinking like Jungle Cruise.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a literal ride in Disney. So.
I've been on it. I went on the French one. It is just a boat. You get on the boat, and the boat goes round the park, and that's it. Like, I swear to God,
was there animals in
I don't remember there being any animals. No. Maybe there is in the Florida one.
Florida has, because they do have a zoo, don't they?
They do.
Florida,
not in France though.
No, I've been to Paris, but I can't remember that one.
Yeah, it was just a boat, and it was like really average. I've been on a boat before, and it's got me somewhere, and this one didn't. Just drop you off in the same place. Anyway, James Mangold. Have you seen Identity?
No, I haven't. I was just looking on my Letterboxd, and I've not seen that one. That's the one I haven't seen.
It's one of those films where I think it's like there's two endings. One of them is okay, and the other is really shit.
Okay.
And the one that made it onto Netflix is the shit ending, and it's really bad. It's like, I can't even really remember, but it's a twist that doesn't make sense. In terms of the plot, it's like hastily rewritten kind of territory. I don't think that's Mangold's fault, because by and large it's directed like a kind of almost Psycho-esque film. Like, it's very noir-y. It's very kind of like paying homage to murder mysteries and definitely to Hitchcock.
Okay.
And it's quite fun, and it's like a kind of labyrinth of potential suspects, all set over one night, when it's like hammering it down with rain, if I remember correctly. John Cusack's in it.
Okay.
It's good. It's just a good film with a really bad ending. I don't actually remember the specifics, but I remember it involving an orangery.
Okay.
It's just like really like such a disappointing ending, and I kind of looked it up because I was genuinely like struck by how out of place it felt. And there's two endings. I went to watch the other one. I was like, oh, that makes a bit more sense. It's still not very good. Like, it just sort of invites you in to a very complex plot structure, and then doesn't resolve it at all, and or then flips it on its head. Fun film though, like a kind of good. I don't think it made much money. It sort of flew under most people's radar, I think. Strange one for him to direct. I think it was like 2005, so maybe a slight career lull for him in terms of box office, etc. But yeah, again, another good example of a sort of stylistically speaking, he knows what he's doing, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He knows how to direct actors, and sort of unafraid of. He doesn't really have his favourites, I don't think. I'm trying to think of actors he's worked with more than once. Maybe Christian Bale, that might be it.
Hugh Jackman.
Oh yeah, of course, with Wolverine. Yeah.
And Logan, yeah.
Yeah, and Logan.
And that's interesting in itself, because, at the beginning of the discussion, we talked about him in the context of that director-for-hire tag, which probably has a much more negative connotation nowadays. And that was his foray into superhero filmmaking.
Yeah.
And I think when he made Logan, Logan was almost like a reflection or a response to
The Wolverine,
which I think he was quite critical about how that process went and how much studio intervention played a role in the outcome of the movie.
Yeah.
Because I mean, my sort of enthusiasm for superhero films has dipped considerably over the last few years. But I remember at the time, my only issue with that was more the ending, which again is very common with superhero films nowadays. But
his third act was pretty shit.
Yeah,
I remember. I remember having a good,
the bullet train thing.
Oh,
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, what a set piece! What an idea for a set piece!
Yeah.
And also the way it's shot is kind of, it respects the gravity, the kind of extreme gravitational and general sort of forces that are being enacted on these actors. Like, I remember quite vividly, like the camera almost, it does glide around a bit, but it sort of does well to avoid obstacles and things, almost like a drone is filming it. I remember it just being like visually a really interesting concept that could have been handled really badly. Like kind of green screeny, which it is, but it's done well. Like, always respected that particular action sequence in the Wolverine and also the atomic bomb bit at the beginning, liked that. But I think it is him realizing, 20th century, this isn't a film directed by me at all, is it? This is a 20th Century Fox film.
Yeah, this is their property.
This is a cash grab. I'm here as a safe pair of hands. I'm here to answer questions, on set, basically, and make decisions on set. But those decisions can always be overruled, and I definitely agree that Logan is a direct response to that. And I do think Logan is, although it's not a perfect film, I think it is more of a critique on the sort of structure of superhero films.
Definitely. I think again, I think if I watched it again now, I don't think I'd be as enamored with it when I first watched it. Because again, my sort of tolerance for superhero films isn't as high as it once was. But I do think the film at least aspires to be a sort of antidote to the formulaic nature of superhero storytelling and the way in which they use their influences.
Yeah,
I think Mangold was far more, given far more license to really establish the influences on the film. The Western is obviously one of the primary influence, in terms of the visual, the colour palette, and the sort of kind of redemptive arc.
Yes.
Like all those kind of things which are kind of, the bread and butter of the Western, he definitely utilised, in a manner that, didn't feel necessarily like it was, because I get the impression with so many superhero films, it's like this film, but they're just trying to like legitimise the superhero film,
Yeah.
It's almost as if it's almost like an admission that these big sort of corporate, these are byproducts of just a big fucking corporate machine.
Yeah.
And the way they try and legitimize them to sort of people with more highbrow tastes is by saying, well, we did borrow some ideas from this film.
I think it's funny you say that, and off the back of that, I just want to sort of take a brief foray into the world of like Letterboxd, because I saw an advert for Paddington in Peru today, and one of the director's influences was, according to Letterboxd, was Fitzcarraldo.
Okay.
I'm like, yeah, right, okay,
yeah,
sure, mate, yeah, okay. I don't know about that. I don't know. Like, I think
that's a hard film to compare to, the sort of lovely world of Paddington.
But it's the same thing, isn't it? Like, you're marketing your film and you're pretending like it has all these influences, and it's sort of actually it's just another marketing ploy. And I think Logan's a good response to that, and actually a genuinely like, no, my influences are this. I want to light it like this. I want to have like a brown kind of aged color palette to reflect the themes of the film. There is a lot of CGI in that film, but like it's employed quite well.
There's more of a ground level approach to it, isn't it? It is like a ground level film.
Yeah, definitely.
In comparison to the sort of the more bombastic nature of the other sort of the other films that were, the other superhero films that existed around that time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a fascinating artifact, and it was released in 2017, so it's almost 7 years ago. So already then,
mad.
the notion of superhero fatigue was already starting.
Yeah,
then, which
yeah,
is
yeah.
crazy to think. Now,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
quite commonplace. It's a general topic of discussion now, superhero fatigue. But back then, it must have been quite a new concept to a lot of people.
Yeah.
No, I love Logan. I do need to watch it again. I've only seen it the once in the cinema, and it was a great experience.
I think maybe people had a bit more reverence for it and a bit more. They were, because the Fox era X-Men films, they're kind of held in. I think we've talked about this before in the context of early 2000s era superhero films. They're almost held in the same way in which the sort of Sam Raimi Spider-Man films are held.
Yeah.
In the sense that this is before this kind of mass. Obviously, these films are obviously mass marketed superhero movies, but I think there was still a sense of not necessarily prestige, but it wasn't. It didn't induce as many sort of eye rolls from people that these films existed. They were kind of. It was a part of the sort of the release schedule of films. You always were gonna get a Batman or a Superman film or a Spider-Man film, but the idea of this massive shared universe was, a fucking glimmer in the eye. Who's the Marvel CEO? I always forget his
Kevin
name.
Feige.
Kevin Feige, yeah. He put a glimmer in his eye.
Oh, Kevin.
A pulse in the testy.
I thought, when you said that, I thought you meant like a kind of like a lentil. I don't know why. Anyway, sorry.
Just yeah.
Oh.
That Kevin Feige just in A&E.
Yeah. Honestly, I have no idea how that happened. Yeah.
Pulses in my testicles. Yeah. I think there's kind of a bit more. People are a bit more ready to sort of tolerate any film that, by extension, is related to that, because they aren't these sort of big tie-in films, and they aren't. Whilst obviously there is a formula and there is an approach, they aren't as indebted to that as Marvel movies are of the modern age. Yes. So I think there is obviously going to be a bit more. People are going to give it a bit more leeway. But I also think Mangold did a better job at managing the kind of more more serious tone, because I think we lament this quite a lot on the podcast. But when we talk about this idea of what makes things adult, and what makes things, I really lament in not Daredevil. I really lament that like Deadpool and Joker, people think that it's adult just have swearing and violence in, and I guess you can maybe forgive Deadpool a little bit more because there's an irreverence that's supposed to be part of his character that apparently means he gets away with everything, apparently. Yeah. Critically. But to me, it's almost more childish to have that attitude.
Okay, yeah.
You can have violence and swearing in a film, and it suddenly elevates it to a sort of more intellectually superior level than its contemporaries.
Yeah, I see.
Whereas I think Mangold, even if I probably, perhaps would not be as into it this time round, I think he deserves credit for at least trying to embed that sort of more serious tone across the board in the film. In terms of the predicament of the character, the relationships he has with others, and of course, the eventual sort of action sequences that come about. They're a lot less. There's something almost clumsy about them, which I quite like. There's not a lot of finesse, which I think is interesting given. Again, it goes back to that sort of the kind of Western thing, doesn't it? The idea of this sort of old gunslinger or something like that. This sort of fading power.
Yeah, definitely. I like how it dispels the notion that Wolverine is invincible as well.
Yeah. I
think that's the theme, obviously directly taken from the source material, Old Man Logan, isn't it? Pretty much.
I don't know. I think Old Man Logan is a bit more. I don't think he has healing issues.
Oh, really?
In that one, it's
he's getting poisoned by his own metal or something?
No, in Old Man Logan, it is literally he's one of the last surviving superheroes, and the villains have won, and America's been split up by the villains.
Okay, now I got that wrong. Okay, so
I mean, I read that comic. This was back when I was into comics, which was a long time ago. But I remember. Yeah.
It's more. He is actually reasonably invincible. In that way.
Yes.
Okay. Wow, okay. No, I did not know that. I genuinely thought it was more of a direct adaptation of that comic, but I never was into comics, so that's probably why I got that wrong. But I just like the idea that, like everything, he has to succumb to time,
Yeah.
even if that is like elongated massively by his mutation. He kind of his cynicism is like, which is present throughout his sort of character arc in X-Men, all of a sudden feels a lot more real and not as funny, and he's not like, there's no quips anymore. Like the fact that he's grumpy about everything, there's like a real reason, and it's all caught up to him, and it's really weighty and hard. And like, I liked how, you know, if you're gonna do an R-rated film, that's a really good way of doing it.
Yeah,
not just adding swearing and adding like blood and just
shit blood as well.
Yeah, like CG blood and people's heads exploding.
Yeah,
I'm thinking like The Boys. I've never actually seen it because it looked, I don't know. Anyway,
that's got quite a loyal following. That
massively.
Yeah.
A lot of people have told me it's great, but I just look at it just really looks like it suffers from what you were saying. Like, oh, we're swearing, oh, there's blood everywhere, and like there's like guts, and people sort of, I don't know, I might be wrong, I've not seen it, but yeah, I think it seems to have kind of suffer from that a little bit, based on the trailers, etc. But no, I like Logan, and I need to see it again. One to maybe own on Blu-ray as well. I think it's probably worthy addition. But yeah, I'm trying to think what did he do directly after Logan? It wasn't.
That was Ford versus Ferrari.
It was Ford v Ferrari after that.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah.
We've already discussed Indiana Jones, which I think is definitely another reason. Like, I would say quite a weak entry from him.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, it's another sort of big franchise movie, isn't it? Again, not necessarily like with the kind of the unique kind of, it doesn't exert the kind of unique dominance that superhero films do, but you know, there's a legacy. It's a legacy sequel, isn't it? There's you know, you're attached to a sense of prestige that obviously comes with Spielberg, and I think we talked about that in the episode about how he's kind of like a perfect fit in some ways, because you know, Spielberg as a filmmaker as well is someone that's very good at. He's again a very steady pair of hands as a filmmaker.
Yes, definitely.
But he also brought a sort of autorial flair to his films that, you know, is in a way that was kind of, you know, captivating enough for, you know, people that loved film and the mainstream public more broadly. Hence his success. But
yeah,
you know, no, it's interesting. You know, that he was picked for that, and I don't know. Yeah, that film. I don't know if it's been aged that well, or if this is a sign that it hasn't, but to me, I can barely remember it, and I don't really have that much to say about it, other than it was okay.
I remember the train scene at the beginning with all the de-aging.
Yeah, pointless.
I remember a rickshaw race in it. I remember,
oh, yeah. Kate Blanchett's the villain, isn't she?
No, that's the previous one.
Oh, is it?
That's
See, there you go.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh, shit, yeah, she is, yeah. Who's the villain in this one?
I can't remember. It's not her, though, I don't think.
Oh, it's is it Mads Mikkelsen?
Yes, it is, yeah. Yeah, it is Mads Mikkelsen, yeah.
Yeah.
Typecast as a villain once again.
Yeah,
so cruel.
I mean, I guess you'd take it for a film like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, with a director like Mangold behind the wheel. Again, another driving pun there. Doesn't make any sense anymore, but there we go, yeah. Yeah, I don't know about that one. His next one is we were talking about this already, but the Bob Dylan biopic.
It's interesting that he's going into that kind of territory, and I think.
Do you think he won the work based on Walk the Line?
You would have to think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, Walk the Line again. That's a film I've not seen for a very long time, but
yeah, I don't actually remember much about that either. I think it's tarred by the brush of a very well made spoof. Walk Hard, and it just like got destroyed by that, because that is quite a funny film. Not a perfect film, but like it just deconstructed the tropes set up. Not to say that James Mangold was the inventor of the musical biopic, but it is riffing on that film in particular quite hard.
Yeah, of course.
Almost in a scary movie fashion, like levels of parody. Although it's much better than those films, but like,
I like the Dewey Cox story. It's good.
For that alone, it sort of falls apart. I don't think I could ever watch it again, even though, you know, I'm Reese Witherspoon, Joaquin Phoenix. Like, I'm remember them being good in it.
Yeah.
And like it's a kind of Oscar baity type
Definitely.
film.
Yeah.
But like he commits to it. He commits to the era and the sort of aesthetic, and that's commendable, I suppose, in itself. But I don't remember an awful lot about Walk the Line, actually. I remember more about the film that parodied it.
Yeah. Likewise, actually.
Yeah. Have you seen Girl Interrupted? I have. Again, I don't remember an awful lot about it, though. He's not consistent as I once thought, because I'm looking at his filmography now and I'm like,
God, we started out singing his praises.
No. Yeah. No, I'm sure he did something called Heavy in 1995, which must have been before. I guess that's probably what got him Copland. So, then Girl Interrupted, Kate and Leopold. Not seen that one.
No.
And then it kind of gets into the.
He did Night and Day, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay, that's an odd choice.
Is that Cameron Diaz
and Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
But I think the sort of pressure Tom Cruise and like kind of exert on their creative forces, not necessarily in a negative way, but I get the feeling he's sort of low key actually the director of most stuff that he's in these days. Probably starting around 2010, which is when Night and Day came out.
Yeah, he's very passionate, isn't he, about the industry, and
yeah,
I think he's also quite passionate about how he comes across too.
Yeah,
we talk about Hollywood egos. I think his more, I think he's a bit more surreptitious about the way he goes about it than someone like The Rock is, maybe. But
yeah,
I don't mean that any kind of in the sense. Obviously, he's had a few weird. He's done quite a lot of odd things, but in terms of like the chat show performances and stuff. But like he seems, he weaves it into his sort of the love of the craft of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's something that would. But thinking about it then with Mangold, I guess in this sort of true sort of directed for hire style, you do tend to have a few duds.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. I mean, he might have established himself as just someone who can deal with stars quite well, hence Girl Interrupted, who, Angelina Jolie, Winona Ryder, at the time, height of their careers in some respects.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, actually. Think about Copland, the fucking acting, levels of acting in that, and...
He just knows that he must know how to direct stars, and
yeah.
He must kind of be unconcerned with their level of fame. And he probably gets on with them quite well, and maybe even gets on with their agents, and presumably it must be a bit of a lot of red tape to jump through with regards to like contractual obligations and stuff. And maybe he's just seen as a safe pair of hands in that respect as well. I mean, I don't know the specifics because I've never directed a film with Tom Cruise in it. But
well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess there's something about that in the sense that studios are probably quite happy for you to sort of like use your influences when it makes the industry look good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just leaning into that Hollywood mythology, isn't he? Which, we all love.
Oh, yeah.
But, I think that there is sort of something a little bit self-masturbatory about it, isn't there? And
yeah.
A director like Mangold, he'll do it well. He'll wank well. But, there's inevitably going to be moments where it doesn't quite work out, and that's just something I guess you have to sort of take as a filmmaker who is going to be in that area. I'd like to see him branch out at some point, maybe.
Yeah, I would. I'd like to see him maybe do a kind of $20 million horror film or something.
Yeah, like a low budget thing. But I just can't see him being that kind of filmmaker.
Well, I mean, Dial of Destiny was $300 million.
That is wild.
It's mental, isn't it? I mean, I think COVID might have not helped, but
might have inflamed the production costs.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of films coming out recently that have unusually inflated budgets. Like Dead Reckoning is another good example of that. I think Gladiator 2 actually might have suffered from that a little bit, even because of the strikes, etc. It's not to say the strikes weren't valuable or good. It's just that it can be, it can increase the cost. But I'd love to see him do something small again. Of course, maybe even something like a la Identity, but with a better ending. Don't get Lindelof to write it. I don't think he did, but Just saying, don't. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, keep him away.
Yeah.
Copland too.
Yeah, Copland part Dukes, set in Iceland, Reykjavik.
Yeah, a
Starring,
known area for harbouring corrupt New York.
yes, high crime
Cops.
rate, famously high crime rate in Iceland. Yeah, I'm always kind of watch. I don't like actively seek out his next project. Like I didn't know the Bob Dylan thing was him until today, but like I'm more interested in it now. Because before, it's getting like an annoying like Timothy Chalamet levels of attraction on social media that's quite difficult to avoid. Just footage, some paparazzo just filming him just walking down the road in like on set or in on location, I should say, in New York. And it's just like there's nothing actually interesting about this. He's just doing like a walking take down a road. I don't know. It's annoying. So I distance myself.
Yeah,
from
I mean, I don't really like biopics, and the Chalamet thing. I mean, you know, I think Hollywood aggressively pushes young, attractive, stars. It always has. But you know, I mean, you think about it. You know, people like Florence Pugh and people like Sydney Sweeney. These people are going to get pushed aggressively, and you know, you're just going to have to sort of tolerate it. And it doesn't mean that they won't be in good stuff.
No,
I think Chalamet, to me, he has a slightly irritating vibe about him, which you know, but I don't let that detract from when he's good. Like, I know he can be good. I know he's a good actor.
Mate, yeah, he's great.
So, you know, it's just, you know, I think it's just the nature of the beast with Hollywood now. They will just aggressively push the new blood. Them just being fucking everything, and then obviously you'll fixate on all the shit things they've done. You know what I mean? That's kind of you know, rattling through. But yeah, I don't know.
There we go.
Yeah,
Mangold. Yeah, liked that. I enjoyed that. It's always fun to revisit someone who's not like I say, not like an auteur, but just has a kind of interesting body of work behind them. Some good, some bad. And
yeah, I agree. Like,
rewatchability is a strong factor, I think.
Yeah, I think sometimes, you know, you can get so wrapped up in, like, you know, the filmmakers that sort of define the medium, or do you know what I mean? Like the big guns, or like the lesser known independent filmmakers. But yeah, there is something to be said for that. That, you know, there is a huge gap in modern Hollywood for this kind of filmmaker.
Yeah,
and it would be nice to see more of those. I mean, I'd take like 10 of these as opposed to like another Marvel or like franchise film. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
You know, they do, when they hit really well in a very satisfying and comforting manner that few films can do. So, yeah, even if he did make a few duds, people like Mangold, you know, it's good to have him around.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you, James Mangold.
Thank you for sticking around.
Yeah. Right, outro?
Yes.
Questing the cinematic void.
There we have it then.
I noticed we'd already sort of started the outro.
Yeah, let's just kind of cleanly carry on the discussion from before.
Yeah. Since we've already talked about him enough, we'll leave Mangold there.
Yep.
Next week,
James Mangold again. No. Sorry.
So we're going to do Anora.
Yes. I will watch it this week.
Because I think not only is the film itself really worth the discussion, but obviously the career of the director.
Yes.
Someone who I think is fast becoming one of my favourite sort of independent American filmmakers around at the moment. I
watched the Florida Project last night. It's great. It's really, really just... Considering it's a film, like a slice of life film that unfolds very, very slowly and tentatively, it's really gripping. I will say no more. We'll save it for next time. But yeah, Sean Baker, he's got a new. He did a film called like Red Rocket, didn't he? Which
I watched that last week.
Got a weird poster. So guy with a donut. Like wearing a donut.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Simon Rex, no less.
Oh right. Okay.
From the Scream films, the later Scream films.
Oh right. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I love Sean Baker a lot. I think there's a lot to unpack
Yeah.
And because the film is an exploration of sex work, we thought it would be interesting to talk about that, the
Yes.
relationship that films have with sex work.
Well, a lot of his films seem to have
Yeah,
that
yeah.
as a theme. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Tangerine, Florida Projects, and now this.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Don't know about his others. Maybe.
Red Rocket too.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
a sort of different element of it, more sort of pornography, but
Oh, yeah, it's all under,
it's all
the,
part of one sort
under the
of.
same umbrella. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, fascinating filmmaker. The way he interrogates ideas of sex work and how that intertwines with notions of sort of people, peripheral America.
Okay. Yes.
That's the kind of thing.
Lesser
he really-
seen. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So we'll talk about those films as well. So that'll be
yeah.
a real stacked episode, and I'm really looking forward to that. So yes, we will do that. Gladiator 2,
Yes.
that's coming. I know you're obviously a big fan of the original.
I love the original. Yeah.
So we'll do that.
yeah, we'll
at some
discuss
point.
that. at
And
length.
also, keenly aware that there's a couple of episodes we said we do, we haven't. I'm going to try and catch Joker in the next week or two.
Nice, man. No worry.
And we'll try and fire out a few episodes over the coming weeks.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, keep your ears peeled for our announcements as well coming.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm saying that, because we decide when we tell you. It's not,
But keep them peeled regardless. Yeah.
peel your ears.
Yeah.
In the meantime, thank you for getting to the end of this episode.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure it's been a slog.
No.
And yes, we will catch you in the next one.
See you then.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.